Today we tear down what may be one of GM's best engines ever. I know that's a bold statement, but this is a 3800. These engines have a propensity of outlasting every transmission that's been bolted to them, outlasting every chassis that they've been bolted into. So many of these cars are junked because the chassis rot or the transmissions go bad, but the engines almost always run. These engines are easy to service, they are great on fuel, they're low stress, the parts are inexpensive. The only real thing I hate about the 3800 is the fact that I can't sell any. I can't make any money on them. This is not an engine that I would normally stock. This is not something I go out and target. I don't buy cars 3800s come in. Otherwise, I love these things. GM's 3800 3.8 liter 90-degree V6 is actually the old Buick 231 odd fire V6, which is based on the same tooling as the 215 aluminum V8 from the early 60s. These engines were around for a very long time, and they've gone through several different iterations. They've been turbocharged, supercharged, and this is actually the final iteration of the naturally aspirated, the L26. This is out of a 2006 Pontiac Grand Prix GT with 126,000 miles on it. It's pretty premature. I know you guys love those details. This engine actually comes compliments of Premier Automotive in Godfrey, Illinois. So you all owe them a huge thank you for today's teardown. Now, he told me the thing I need to do first before I do anything else is pull the drain bolt. So I guess we're going to drain the crankcase and see what comes out. Okay, let's see what happens. That's not an oil pan, that's a water pan. It also looks like coolant. That's not water, that is asparagus. Oh, hey, look, there's some oil mixing in now. That's not really oil. That's muddy milkshake. And a lot of it. Yuck. Okay, this one's bad. Are you done yet? You've been at this for a while now. It still doesn't look like oil. It's oil. This is an old engine. It doesn't need that 0W0 stuff. Yeah, this one's bad. Real bad. We're going to let that drain and move on. We are still draining, but I want to turn it over and see what it feels like. I'm pretty sure it turns over just because they were able to get all the torque converter bolts out. Yeah, it turns over just fine. I bet you it still ran. Probably not too well. I feel compression. It's a fine engine. It's fine. It's probably not a problem as long as you don't put coolant in it. Next, we'll pull the plugs. Well, these plugs actually look pretty good, except for the fact that they're Autolites. I don't see anything smashed, broken, bent, no signs of moisture, no buildup. They don't even look that old. They're just Autolites. Next, we're going to start on the top of the engine. We'll start with the fuel rail. Sorry guys, didn't mean to kick you. Next, we'll pull the upper plenum. Now this upper plenum, this aluminum plenum, was pretty much only on the Series 3s, and it was a common upgrade for the Series 2 that had the plastic one that would melt. Yep, it's dirty. Next, we're going to work on some of these brackets. I'm actually going to get this heat shield out of the way. Let's see if we can get these plug wires released. That'll stay for later. Since we're in the area, we'll get this bracket, and I guess I'll start unbolting the front exhaust manifold. Now we do have a dipstick tube to contend with. It looks very unhappy. Do I want to do this now? It's really early in the teardown. I don't know I don't know if this is a good idea. I'm going to do it. It can't be that bad. It's empty. We knew that. Well, it turns. Can we? Can we? See? I like 3800 just fine. I admit I cheated a little bit. I sprayed some penetrator on the bolts before, probably a couple days ago actually, when this engine first came in, because I just know how these go. And it seems my efforts were not in vain. Well, there's the front exhaust manifold. That's not what I wanted to happen. While we're here, we'll get this crossover pipe out. Man, it's easy. And we might as well get this rear manifold off. Now I can go to town with a 13mm socket. Next, we'll get the EGR valve off. A couple more briquettes. Now, some more brackets. Blue. Ah, I broke that. Huh. Well, that's not good. Yeah, that's pretty ugly. Now it's time for the lower manifold. All right, now the intake is ready to come off. And this is going to be the great reveal, I think. Ooh, that's bad. How about them intake gaskets? I think that's probably the worst part of one of these engines are these intake gaskets. Yeah, that's gross. 126,000 miles and they look like this. And this side's better. Not a lot better. Or wait, is that supposed to be? No. No. We gotta try it. Surely. Oh, wow. I think we've got a problem here. It's like sawdust. It's not sawdust. It's like sawdust, though. I still haven't gotten through it, but if you look at the rest of this, there's some milkshake in here. It's clear it sat with some moisture in here, probably from whatever caused this problem. Intake gaskets, maybe there's more. Maybe there's more to this. This may slightly be overkill. That was terrible. I don't always have good ideas. I'm going to close my face now. I think that's good enough, right? Could have gone without tasting it. Let's just, there we are. That's melted. And then we got this one. That's not good either. So yeah, I think this thing needed intake gaskets, just a little. And here's the orange juice that came out of the intake. Oh, why did I do that? That's not good. We'll get this bracket out of the way pretty quick. Now it's time to pop the valve cover off. Ew. Well, we're not surprised, are we? Well, it's pretty ugly. Now, I don't see anything bent or broken or out of place. So that part looks good, but it was definitely mixing coolant and oil everywhere for a long time. Let's see what's behind door number 2. It's bad again. Yeah. I don't really expect to sell anything from this engine. Now let's get the rockers off. Well, nothing's bent. One thing I noticed as I push these pull rods out is that the ball ends have a brushed finish, which is not good. They're supposed to be a mirror finish, and I bet that's because it had coolant mixed with the oil and it was running that way. And it wears out the rockers and the push rods. Now it's time to crack the head bolts loose. They don't really crack, sorry. Hopefully this doesn't make too much of a mess. Hopefully it comes off. Let's get blue. Did I miss some bolts or something? That's what it was. I just had to break the seal. Ooh, those look suspiciously clean. I just wanna... that's fine. Now we need to do our test. I don't suspect we have anything broken in here, but for the sake of consistency. Wow, that turns over easy. Okay, let's take a look here. Cylinder walls don't look awful. A little glazed. Pistons are pretty clean, like they've been ingesting coolant. They're not super duper clean, so maybe they haven't, but they look cleaner than normal, and it's clear this engine sat in one spot for some time. Let's go look at that cylinder head. These are plugged up pretty good. Head gasket. I mean, it looks ugly. Yeah, it looks bad, but it's not bad, if that makes any sense. Cylinder head. It doesn't look too bad. I don't think these heads have any value at all. Maybe I'm wrong. But I don't see any cracks or anything. I don't know where they like to crack either, if they even crack. Ooh, we got some sort of science experiments going on in there. Now we'll crack the rockers loose from this side. Similar story on this side, but we do have one good-looking push rod. And there's the rocker arm that went in. I did not keep push rods in order. Now it's time to crack the other head bolts loose. Now we'll try to break the seal here. Gotta do our test. Everything looks good. So looking at the cylinders, they look pretty good, actually. I shouldn't have said anything. That doesn't look as good. Keep in mind, this is a relatively low mileage engine. I don't see any problems here. And actually, it does look like the head bolts do go into the cooling system. Those are drilled all the way through. And look at the cylinder head. Little bitty holes for the coolant to go through. Let's see if we can get this head gasket off. Yeah, those are supposed to be much bigger than that, just so you guys know. Nope, not going to say it. And I don't really see any issues with this cylinder head either. Now, obviously, I can't tell because of the head gasket material left behind on the cylinder head. There still could be damage behind here. That would take quite a bit of cleaning, possibly resurfacing to find cracks if they crack in that location. Now, we can pull the lifters. Well, I didn't expect to find any major issues here. It's clear that it's had coolant run through this. All of the rollers feel pretty good. I didn't see any lifter damage, but these engines never had AFM or DOD or any of that nonsense. Just normal roller lifters. Everything feels pretty decent. I'm just going to rotate this a little to drain some of whatever is in the engine. That's what you want to see. Oh, it gets darker. All right. I'm just more concerned with stuff hitting the floor. Not that I don't have any pigment here to clean it up. Next, let's work on this water pump. Yeah. Churning that Dex Cool butter. Ooh, that's hot. Ooh, that's real hot. All right, this should come off pretty easily. Ooh, look at that rust. This thing is done. You could never reuse this. And for those wondering, that is a dowel, not a broken bolt. There are two of them, and this looks really bad in here. Now, the crank pulley bolt. Well, that was simple. Now, I don't know how much force this is going to take, but I'm a little apprehensive. That doesn't fit in there. So now I got to find a different adapter for this. Now, I have my doubts if this is going to work. This is going to work. It's going to be fine. So what do we think? Is this going to work? I have a little piece inserted in there that I think is for this task, but nothing's guaranteed, you know. Oh, great success is happening. And there's the piece I put in there. I think that's what that's for. If not, I used it wrong and it worked. All right, now this piece comes off. Now we're just going to zip some bolts out, see what happens. Now some bolts from the bottom. This will come off, right? Or do I need to pull the pan on these for this one first? I don't know that I've ever had one of these this far down, so I don't remember. I think the oil pump's back here. So we'll flip it over and pull the pan next. Just gonna give it a little thunk. Wow, that's about what you'd expect. Well, the pan is exactly how you would imagine. Full of coolant and oil mixture. But I don't see any signs of forbidden glitter or metal. It's just really ugly. Back to this front cover. Well, that just comes right off. What does this do? That's about what I expected. Will this just pop off now? Seems to be quite a lot of RTV in here. And the front cover is coming off. Well, the condition of this front cover leads me to think that this has been off before. This is a mess in here. Got all the colors. And look at that RTV job. Professional. Now we're going to take apart the oil pump. I don't suspect we're going to find any problems. And I don't see any. Well, there definitely is some wear on the housing. But when you get to the gears, they actually look pretty good. But, you know, we expected that. It did wear a little bit on this side. And that's the side that faces the aluminum housing. And then on the rear, there's some marks. I wouldn't call this bad by any stretch. And the timing system doesn't look too bad either. I don't see really anything jumping out at me. Pickup looks nice and clear. Rotating assembly doesn't look too bad, but lots of oil and coolant mixture in here. While we're here, I'll remove the oil pickup. All right, now we're going to turn the short block over and see how it feels. I don't really feel any problems here. Next, we're going to take the chain tensioner loose. Look at that simple piece. There is some wear on it. Actually, quite a bit of wear. It's a lot for 126,000 miles. Now we're going to see if we can get this cam gear off. Nice timing set. Now let's see if we can pull the camshaft out by pulling the cam gear off. I didn't know how that came apart. Well, the cam looks pretty good. Journals look good. There's a lot of oil and coolant mixture all over this thing. But I think it survived. And from what I can see of the cam bearings, they all look pretty decent. Let's see if we can pull this balance shaft. It's a maybe. It looks like this might be pressed in here. It's got roller bearings, at least at the front. Yeah, that's staying put. Now it's time to pull the rods and pistons out. We'll start at the front. Let's see how hard these are to get out. I bet they're not too difficult. Look at that. Next two. And the final two.
Tapioca pudding.
It's just going to kind of hang out there. Now it's time to pull the main caps. What's interesting is there's a bolt here, 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 but the rear cap doesn't have splayed bolts. These are tough. Tolerances are very tight. We got it. Let's start off with these rod bearings. They're nice. They're really nice. Hardly anywhere. I'd put these in another engine. Okay, maybe that might be a stretch. But they look great. The rods look good, but the pistons, at least on this bank, quite a bit of skirt wear on the thrust side. I didn't see any other damage to the pistons. This one's not so bad. This bank was not terrible. You'll see it again. Right there. Sorry, there's this goo sludge is everywhere. Pistons look nice for the most part. I think they're reusable, but I don't know why you would. They're not very expensive new. But they all look about the same as far as how clean they are, so I don't think it was a crack in one cylinder per se. If that were the case, we'd have one really clean piston versus the rest of them, but we don't. The main bearings look pretty good too, but when you get to the rear main bearing shell, this one here, there's a little bit of damage, a little groove there. And the crankshaft doesn't look terrible. It's definitely turnable, or at least you could probably polish this one out. But there is one spot of concern. Well, that's not great either. Nor is that. But that's what I'm referring to. There must have been coolant sitting here, and it actually caused some corrosion on the journal. And that's probably where we saw the bearing damage from. I think they told me this car sat for like 4 years before they decided to put an engine in it. The cylinder walls aren't awful. I think they would clean up pretty well, but there's some pretty good corrosion from some moisture sitting on top of the number one compression ring. Not wonderful. Yeah, I don't see anything else jumping out at me. And that doesn't mean there's something I missed, because this thing is pretty dirty. And it's pretty impossible to check all the surfaces of everything, heads, block, without a lot of aggressive cleaning. Intake gaskets on any of the 60 or 90 degree GM V6s, it's a pretty common failure. Deck's cool, turns acidic with age, and a lot of people don't change their coolant on a regular basis. And when they do start to run low on coolant, some people add tap water, which is a terrible idea. Distilled water is cheap. It's just not as convenient. You couple that with a not so wonderful intake manifold and intake gasket design, and this is what happens. However, if you catch it early, it's not a huge deal. Intake gaskets, it's not a ton of money in parts or labor, and then you're back on the road for a long period of time. But if you let it go, you let coolant and oil mix for any duration of time, it gets really expensive, or you're replacing the engine. Now this engine, I bet it still ran. I bet it's completely rebuildable. There might be some damage that I missed that I can't see because of the gasket material left on the head surface or the block surface. However, if all of that checks out, the parts are cheap, it's just a ton of labor. For someone to pay a shop's labor to dismantle this engine, clean everything out, send the heads to a machine shop, pull the pan, it's not even worth the liability. Whereas you can buy a running 3800 for about $500 with a good warranty, you slam some new intake gaskets in it, and you put it in the car and ship it, and it's back on the road. It's a lot less time, it's a lot less money, and it's a lot less liability. And that's probably why it's hard for me to find a 3800 core, because they have no core value. The engines, when they're good, are cheap, so the core value is pretty much scrap metal. So for me to find one at a salvage yard, it just wasn't going to happen, which is why we all owe Premier Automotive a huge thank you for finally providing a 3800 for this channel. I know it wasn't a super exciting teardown, no malice in the combustion palace, nothing's blown up, but if you'd like to buy any parts off of this engine or anything else I've torn down, just not that, I'm going to leave our email in the video description. You can also go to importapart.com. I've been uploading our parts cars just about every single week. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown as always. I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.